Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and we have another award-winning mailbag. The award from my mom. She absolutely loves these mailbag portions of Texans Today. And if you want to be on a future mailbag, make sure to join us. We go live here on the channel every Wednesday, 3:30 Central Time. Be there or be square. All the questions today are from our loyal subscribers who tuned in to our Texans Today live show. And if you are watching this live, you can still get your question in. Just use hashtag Texans or Super Chat to get on the show. First up, let's go with Amanda Pearl, hashtag Texans. If there is a standout defensive player like Sonny, Lee, or Downs that falls to the Texans, would you be upset if we didn't draft offense round one? That's a fantastic question. Speaking of, Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, I really don't think there's any possible way that they fall to 28. Now, if they're falling in the late teens, I actually wouldn't mind the Texans jumping up and getting a premier talent, because the thing is, I know you need offensive line help, and I know you need, offensive help in general, but if you have the chance to get like a generational talent, if you think a Sonny Styles or a Caleb Downs is that guy, then you can't, fault them for trying to get the best player in the draft or who they think is the best player in the draft. Now, if the Texans don't make any moves in free agency, if they keep it status quo with the O-line, I would be a little upset if they didn't go offensive line in round one. But it's definitely something that the Texans would have to consider. I think the only point that I would go against this, right? The only thing that I would say you don't necessarily need to do that is because different drafts have different strengths, right? Each and every year we see, like a couple years back, there was that amazing quarterback draft that had, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Drake May. Last year had a lot of, offensive linemen, had, some good talent there. This year, in this year's draft, linebacker and safety, very talented and a lot of depth. Edge rusher as well for my guy, producer Reed. So I think you don't need to, take a stab at those guys in round one, especially if you get to pick 28 and there's like 7 good linebackers that are still on the board. I mean, Jacob Rodriguez, I think, would be an absolute steal in round two. So give me the O-lineman in round one. I think it's a decent idea, and I think it's something the Texans would consider. But at the end of the day, I don't know if I'd be mad, but I do think the Texans should go O-line in round one. Next up, Thomas King, hashtag Texans. Do you think we trade for a wide receiver or offensive lineman? I would help offensive lineman. Well, I talked about it in a previous video. Actually, previous video on my live show, trading for different offensive linemen. Elgin Jenkins was a name. Cesar Ruiz was another name. I think it would be much easier to go ahead and draft some O-linemen, though, because offensive line, in terms of trading for guys, normally you don't see top premier talent get traded. Maybe left tackle. The Texans did that with Laramie Tunsil. They also traded for Laramie Tunsil. But I think, you look at some of the mock drafts recently, Mel Kiper had the Texans taking Caden Proctor. Bleacher Report, PFF, had the Texans taking Max Ahinachor. I think he would be another good option for the Texans in round one. Monroe Freeling, like the list goes on of different offensive linemen you can take in round one. And it is to be noted, the past 2 seasons, the Texans have traded for a wide receiver. They traded for Stephon Diggs. This past year, they traded for Christian Kirk. So do they keep the streak going on with another wide receiver? I don't think necessarily they need to. I like the 2 young guys in Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll. You have Nico Collins, and then you have Tank Dell coming back into the form. So I don't know if you need to trade for either of these positions, actually, Thomas King. I would say if you're going to trade for a guy, maybe a defensive tackle, a safety, or a running back. Those would be my top 3 positions that I would want to see the Texans trade for if they were looking to get into the trade market. All right, let's go to the next question from H-Town Hype Man. Hashtag Texans. Would the Texans be better off with Kirk Cousins? Oof. Actually, we have a player card from a previous video around Kirk Cousins that we can bring up. Interesting that you say that, because obviously Kirk Cousins, my initial reaction would be no. I don't think Kirk Cousins would be that much better than what we have right now in, CJ Stroud or Davis Mills, I don't know, man, because he's old, right? He's getting up there in age. He's, 37 years old. Falcons, they might want to move on from him, right? He's going into the last year of his deal. They have a whole new front office. They have a new head coach over there in Atlanta. And the very interesting thing around Kirk Cousins is this. If you were to trade for Cousins, the cap hit, the Falcons would eat a ton of money. They're going to eat a ton of money either way. But if you were to trade for Kirk Cousins, the cap hit would be $2.1 million, and then you could cut him for basically zero dead money. He has zero guaranteed in 2027. So I don't think it would make a ton of sense to trade for Kirk Cousins, but it is an intriguing option. I'm still on the train that I believe that CJ Stroud can come back and be a good quarterback for this Texans team. I have not given up hope yet on CJ7. I think that he can turn it around this offseason. Maybe cutting his hair can help that. But let me know down in the comment section. It was a good question. What do you think? Should the Texans consider trading for Kirk Cousins? Give me a trade or a pass down in the comment section. I'm going to pass. It's a no for me, dog. It's a good idea. I see the train of thought because Kirk Cousins, he's a veteran quarterback. He's had a lot of experience in the NFL. And he actually, and I see a lot of people hating on him in the comment section right now in the live show. He actually didn't do horrible. I think he won his last 5 games for the Atlanta Falcons this season. Almost had them going back into the playoffs, right? The Falcons were tied for the division lead at the end of the season. It was a tiebreaker, the reason they didn't make the playoffs. So he was actually playing some good ball down the stretch for Atlanta. I just think with 2 guys on the roster that you already like in CJ Stroud, Davis Mills, if you were going to make a move for Kirk Cousins, why not just go to Davis Mills? I think that would be a much better option for this Texans squad. Next question coming in from Thardinger? Hashtag Texans, will Tank Dell return as great of a threat as he was before his last injury? H-Town. Hold it down. This is a great question because everything that I was hearing around NRG, everything that I was hearing around the Texans facility is that there was actually, a chance that Tank Dell was going to return at the end of this year. He was pushing for it hard. But the sticking point was the Texans didn't want to rush him out there and risk, getting him out there too early and re-injuring himself, right? Sometimes you got to save guys from themselves because Tank Dell, he has a heart of a warrior. If it was up to him, he probably would have played at the end of this past season. And the one thing is going to be Tank Dell, the best part of his game was his route running, his quick cuts, his ability to, put his foot in the ground and, stick and move. Is that going to be the same? Like, is he going to have that same quickness, that same agility? Thanks to modern medicine, maybe he does. Maybe he does have that ability to, regain all of that agility, all of that strength in his knees and his legs and, continue on the path that he was before the injuries. And we know the one thing that I'll say is that I think Tank Dell, even if he doesn't return to his, greatness that he was before the injury, what he does for the morale of this team and the morale of CJ Stroud is almost worth its weight in gold because you see a difference in Stroud whenever he's on the field. You see a difference in the wide receiver room, the guys on the sideline. When Tank Dell is around the team, there's a different energy. It's kind of like Kamara Lassiter, Will Anderson on the defensive side. He's like that on the offensive side. And, maybe CJ Stroud needs to get a little bit better at that, being a team leader, being a guy like that can get guys riled up. But Tank Dell, I think, is that guy on the sidelines for the Texans. And a return by him this year, I'm excited to see what he can do. Even if he's not the same player, even if he's like 80 or 90% of that guy, I think the wide receiver room is in a much better spot with Jaden Higgins ascending, Jalen Knoll. I think he's going to be another year better with this Texans squad. If Tank Dell, even if he comes back and he's the wide receiver 4, I think he's going to be a really good wide receiver 4 for this team. And I wouldn't be mad at all if he's able to come back and play, even if he's not as good as he was, I think he'll still help this Texans team out in the long run. More questions coming up here in just a moment, but couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing sponsor over at Prize Picks. The big game is almost here. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Since the big game is right around the corner, that means the last chance to get in on the football action before next season. Close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. If you miss fantasy football, Prize Picks, they let you play fantasy football during the biggest game of the year. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections. And I love how straightforward Prize Picks is. I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to calculate my payouts. Prize Picks makes it easy with their payout multipliers, whether it's as simple as just a 3x or as big as a 2,000x. Prize Picks makes it easy to understand how much I can win. And for the big game, speaking of winning, you're going to do a lot of winning, especially if you take advantage of Prize Picks max discount, which is Drake May, 0.5 passing yards, add it to your lineup. It is a free win. He's going to throw 1 yard in the big game. So you can add that to your lineup. The lineup that I'm pairing it with, I'm going with Kenneth Walker, 3.5 yards on his first rush. Give me the more on that. Ramondre Stevenson, 0.5 rushing or receiving touchdowns. Give me the more on that. And then Sam Darnold, 1.5 passing touchdowns. I'm going the more on that. Life's too short to take the less, so I'm going with the more. You can use my lineup or make your own. Just do it with our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, cracked. Next up, hashtag Texans. Should the Texans restructure Tytus Howard's contract to free up some money for free agency? Shout out to my guy, producer Reed. He saw this question before the ad read. Okay, that's why he's one of the best in the biz. Bam, just like that. If you do restructure Tytus Howard, or if you decide to extend him, the restructure savings would be a little bit upwards of $12.15 million. I actually did a video on this. If you just go back on the channel and just search, it's I believe the title is "The Texans Just Got Great News from the NFL," because I talked about the salary cap increasing and also how the Texans can save a bunch of money by restructuring contracts. I think, yeah, of course, you could restructure Tytus Howard's contract, move some money down the road. I think more likely, if they want to keep Tytus Howard in Houston and just keep him as the right tackle moving forward, I think they're going to renegotiate his deal and extend him for maybe a couple more seasons, and that will also lower his cap hit, and you'll be able to push some of that money down the road. Because right now they have him slated in at left guard, and he's played good at left guard, but he's better at right tackle. That's his normal spot. That's the position that he feels more comfortable at. Trent Brown was good at the right tackle spot this year. But I think if you're going to keep Tytus Howard, why not try to play him at his best position, which is that right tackle spot? Unless you're going to pay Trent Brown, which he's getting up there in age, and kind of sucks that he wasn't available in that Patriots playoff game. I think he definitely would have helped out the run game for this Texans squad. I would say you want to probably restructure his contract, but more likely you're going to come up with a new contract, renegotiate it, and extend him for another year or two. Good question, though, Cracked. Anointed Stan, in your opinion, what is the possibility of us getting Hall 1-100? Well, funny enough, the Texans were reportedly interested in Breece Hall during the trade deadline, but for some reason the Jets weren't willing to part ways, and mostly because I think depending on the contract that Hall gets, they could be in line to get a comp pick, because basically the formula is like if you lose players in free agency, and depending on the contracts they get, you could get comp picks, either like a third or fourth or fifth round pick in return the year after that. So the Texans are definitely interested in Breece Hall, but so will other teams. I think other teams will also be interested in getting Breece Hall. 1-100, say maybe 40% chance. I think there's a decent chance that they look at him. There's a decent chance that they try to ink him to a deal. I think it's just depending on what Breece Hall wants. If he wants the most money possible, probably not going to be the Houston Texans. There's other teams with way much more cap space than the Texans have this offseason. But if he wants the best opportunity and the best position to win right now, I think Hall is going to look at the Houston Texans and say, there's a golden opportunity to go in there, be the RB1, have Woody Marks be the, guy to be your, thunder and lightning with you and Marks. And I think, he could be a decent option for this team. But like I said, if he wants to just get paid the most money possible, unfortunately, probably not with the Houston Texans. Woody Not So Marks, hashtag Texans. Could the Texans make a move for Alvin Kamara? Back-to-back running back questions. Okay. Yes, they could possibly make a move for Alvin Kamara. But at the end of the day, he's turning 31 years old. And the last time I checked, I don't think the Saints really save a lot of money by trading him. Like, if you're the New Orleans Saints, he's a fan favorite. And I don't know what they're doing at the running back position there in New Orleans. They have been mocked to get Jeremiah Love. I don't see how it benefits New Orleans to necessarily trade Alvin Kamara, especially if they're going to eat a bunch of dead cap. I mean, maybe if they just want to move on from him, I think it's more likely that they'll just release him, but we'll see. What say you, though? We've gotten a lot of running back questions. Do you think the Texans will add another – I like this part of it, Reed. Do you think the Texans will add another starting running back this offseason? Not just a name, not just a guy in the 6th or 7th round. Do you think the Texans will add a starter at the running back spot? Give me a yes. Give me a no down below in the comment section. I think yes. I think they will. It's still up in the air around Joe Mixon, whether or not he's going to return next year to the Texans or to football in general. If you look at his IG, it does sound like he wants to remain a member of the Houston Texans and he wants to return in 2026. Will the Texans want to bring him back, though? Depending on, whether or not he wants to, lower his cap number, help out the Texans a little bit, and how healthy he is, because we still don't know the injury that Joe Mixon suffered. It's still this huge mystery around what happened with Joe Mixon. I think more likely than not, though, the Texans do look to add another running back, maybe a potential starter this offseason. Abraham Morales coming in. Hashtag Texans. How come we never got to see Eli Cox this year? Wasn't good. I mean, he wasn't good enough to usurp Jake Andrews, and then whenever Jake Andrews went out, Jarrett Patterson, better than him. You could look at, OTAs, preseason. He looked decent there at the spot, and they, had him on the practice squad. But at the end of the day, a lot of the reps that he got, and it's hard to evaluate guys in that position because, okay, yeah, like he's doing pretty good, but he's also going up against, other third stringers, fourth stringers in practice and in preseason. So possibly could be a decent name, a decent option, but the other half answer to this is he plays the center position. Who starts at center for the Houston Texans? Jake Andrews. Jake Andrews, Cole Popovich, they're boys, which really scares me because I want the Texans to upgrade at the center spot this offseason. I don't know if Cole Popovich and Nick Caserio are going to do that. I think they might run it back with Jake Andrews this next year. Last question coming in from Happy D'Amico. Hashtag Texans. Are you worried about Cam Ward with Daboll? Saw he was at the Rockets game the other day. He is a, Texan. He is from the state of Texas, and he was at the Rockets game the other day. And I am actually kind of worried about Cam Ward with Daboll. Brian Daboll, the former Giants head coach, previous to that, worked with the Buffalo Bills, and a lot of people credit Daboll for Josh Allen's development in the NFL and, getting to where he is at today, being one of the best quarterbacks, if not maybe the best quarterback in the NFL right now, him and Patrick Mahomes. So it does worry me a little bit, right? Like, I thought Cam Ward was a great prospect coming out of Miami. I thought he was going to be a lot better. Obviously, the Titans were a dumpster fire. They fired their coach halfway through the year. I thought they've done a lot of good moves this offseason. I think the Robert Saleh hire was good. I think the Brian Daboll hire as OC is another good hire. So I think, more than the Colts, I think the Titans, maybe even close to the Jags, could fight the Texans for the top spot at the AFC South going into next year. All right, that's all I have for you on today's show, folks. If you made it to the end, make sure to hit that sub button for more Texans content. Remember, we have our weekly live shows every Wednesday at 3:30 Central Time, and videos going out every day 100% for free. So why not go down and hit that sub button?